the 6, and we are going back to our roots from season 1. That's right, we have a very special surprise because we watched the Jennifer Lopez documentary on Netflix, Halftime.
You hear that?
It was like a guitar string almost.
It's because I've stretched this microphone stand to its width. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, we're back in JLo town, back on the block with Jenny.
hmm
I'm excited. This obviously is probably going to be one of those loose, bonusy type of episodes, not too constructed. There's not a
Yeah.
cast here. There's no script.
No.
It's a documentary.
No.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about it. I did want to put a disclaimer out there because,
hmm
at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, Simone, but if you agree, let me know
Sure, sure.
that since this is a documentary, all the people who like conspiracy theories, want to be contrarian, want to be like realist, I'm gonna just assume that this documentary is as real as it gets. I'm not gonna assume that anything was done or said because there are cameras there. I think a
hmm
lot of times with celebrities, if they make a documentary or have a crew filming them, sometimes people think like, oh, well, they know they were being filmed, so they probably like said this or did this, so they look this way. I'm just gonna
Mm,
assume that this is Jennifer Lopez as real as possible for a documentary, not
because
super raw, but
we know she's real. The way she walks, the way she talks. But I think to counter claim or whatever, to hit back with a little rebuttal from that argument is that celebs are always on camera. I feel like regardless if they have a documentary crew in their house, they're always being watched and scrutinized in some way or another anyways. So I
yeah.
didn't feel that, oh, she's saying this because she's making this documentary or whatever. Like, I felt like it was just a very normal conversation that she would have. And it was actually less talking head moment where she was interviewed and more just some really cool behind the scenes stuff of getting ready for different award shows, getting ready for the Super Bowl halftime show. Um, and I mean, I guess if we could write a little summary of the documentary, it's called Halftime, so duh. It mainly focuses on her performance with Shakira, what it was like for her to learn how to share the stage, and like kind of learning about I mean, we already know that this NFL is not the greatest company and easiest company to work with. So the backlash that she got with her choices in performing, and also curtails the end of Hustlers, a little bit of making of Hustlers, her Golden Globe nomination, and her Oscar snub, which if you haven't listened to that episode, Hustlers was a two-parter for us, and we went really deep into the Academy Award. So, oof.
I got new smoke for them. I got some new complaints.
Me
So,
too. Me too.
and
And
the Golden Globes, you about to get it. Let it
yes.
rain.
Yes, 100%. And so that's majority what, this documentary covers. It ends on a really lovely note in January of 2021 when the Biden administration was being sworn in and her singing at the inauguration, and her choice of song um, really tied in well with her halftime show and her overall message with the halftime show. So overall, this documentary is so really Jennifer's voice on being a proud Latina woman and being proud of where she came from, where her parents came from, and how hard she has worked in her career up until this point. And she's just getting started, baby.
Yeah, I'm glad you said all that because I feel like since, I'm on social more that, you know, people probably think I'm way more biased than you. So, but I'm about to talk my shit real quick
Go for
because
it.
when this trailer came out, you know, I
Hmm.
saw everybody on the all the trolls, all the haters on the internet. Who cares? Who's gonna watch this? Like nobody cares. Or like she wasn't even the best part of the halftime show, and she's making a documentary on it. Like,
Mm.
and the I don't know. It just makes me. I'm already fearful for this world and our country and all that stuff. But man, the stupidity of people on the internet sometimes, because it's like, first of all, Netflix, big company, definitely, they do definitely throw money at people. But, you know, people who are definitely bankable. And JLo,
Hmm.
she has a fan base. Like there are people who clearly watch this. It was number 2 on Netflix when it came out. It's still
Hmm.
number 6 when I just watched it today as well at not at work, but I listened to it while I was working. But that the halftime part of it is a metaphor, people. Hello, like so many people had to clarify that it's not just about the halftime show. Yeah, that's a part of it, but it's also about her turning 50 and what she's accomplished up until then. So part one of that internet charade, and then part two is like when it did come out, or not when it did come out, right before it came out, all these headlines from all these journalists and news outlets who had already seen it, you know, I'm sure they got like screenings or whatever,
Hmm.
you know, are saying that or quoting her part where she's like, it's the dumbest thing to have two people share the halftime show.
They clearly, yeah, they clearly missed that mark. And, I caught up on the like double entendre or like double use of the word halftime because in the middle of the documentary or right at the beginning, like she had just turned 50.
Mm-hmm.
And that was obviously one of the big um like celebrations of being able to do hustlers at that age, which we've talked about the bullshittery of that comment alone of women like, wow, you've achieved like this great thing at this age. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so and what? Like, have you seen my work ethic? Have you like seen how much energy I put into the show? So I like that it had that kind of double meaning. Oops, sorry, that like double meaning and significance for her. And it really, to me, I mean, who knows how much they cut out or, chose to show, but Jennifer doesn't dislike Shakira. There's no issue with Shakira. The issue is that the Super Bowl halftime show is already a short show as it is with 12 minutes. Shakira on her own, no offense to her, but in my opinion, I don't think Shakira has enough on her own.
Oh my God, you're gonna get us flamed.
I know, I'm sorry. I don't think she, and I respect her a lot, but single wise, hit wise, I don't think Shakira could have done this on her own. I think she still would have had some other fun celebrity guests do some dance song numbers with her, sing with her. But I think Jennifer Lopez fucking could have run 12 minutes easy on her
Yeah.
own with all of her hits. Like at one point when she's working with her music producer, she's like, "How am I supposed to edit all of your hits? How are we supposed to pick of all the songs that you've done, which ones stay in the show and be able
Which
to convey that meaning?"
which people also, and not JLo fans obviously, but casuals, you know,
Hmm.
and people with Twitter fingers would like to rewrite history and say that JLo couldn't carry the halftime show and that Shakira was better and that she doesn't have enough hits to do it. And I was like, how stupid are you guys? Because she's done a Vegas show, which way longer than a halftime show, easily. She's been honored by MTV as a Video Vanguard Award, easily longer than the halftime show to do your hits medley for that.
Hmm.
Medley for that. She's done other performances like the BBA performance we watched where she took popular songs, but like she's very much capable of
Yeah.
pulling off a medley of something for a show like this. And then all her collabs alone, like she didn't even bring out people she had songs with.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if she had her own, like she didn't have to share with Shakira. She could have brought out Ja Rule. She could have brought out Fat Joe. She could have brought out
LL Cool J.
Nas. Like she could have brought out Dale, Mr.
Yeah.
305, Mr.
Of course,
Worldwide.
Mr.
Like
Worldwide.
I'm surprised that she didn't because they were in Miami. So that part I
That's
never thought
true. But I
about
think
that
she was
before.
also focusing more on like femininity or like female
Yeah.
empowerment. And granted, she
Well, they
did do
did
the
bring out
cover of the Bruce Springsteen song, but like
yeah.
I think it was more of like this also like cool girl power moment as well. And I
Yeah.
really didn't think that the issue was sharing it with Shakira. The issue is just, what is it? I wrote down the quote about um it's insulting to ask two Latinas to do the same job that's historically done
By
by
one
one
artist.
person, by
Yeah.
one artist.
Which is true when you look at previous Super Bowl performances, which is another point other people were like, oh, why wouldn't she want to share? Because it hadn't really been that way before. Everyone, even when you think about, Beyonce's Super Bowl, yes, Destiny's Child was there, but it was Beyonce's Super Bowl and those were her guests. Even
Mm-hmm.
though Beyonce stole the show
Mm-hmm.
during the Coldplay one, Coldplay was the headliner and she's friends with Chris Martin, so
Right.
I'm sure he was happy to like give her some time. They also brought out Bruno Mars, but
Mm-hmm.
like it traditionally isn't ever split. Now we've seen performances like last year's where you have like Dr. Dre, Snoop, Mary J. Blige, 50
Yeah.
Cent,
Yeah.
Eminem,
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar. That's six people, which crazy. But Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Dre has worked with all of them, so that's a good way to showcase his music. But most of the time, it's been one person. Hell, The Weeknd. That's another thing that
Had
pissed
a
me
whole
off.
last set of him just running around behind a camera and bright.
Yes, and you want to say this lady can't do a whole show by herself?
Yeah.
Fuck out of here! Like her career's longer than his too. Like
Yes. And I think wasn't before Jennifer Lopez and Shakira, wasn't it Maroon 5? And that's when
yes,
they were like, you got to get your fucking shit together, halftime
yeah.
show. Like, it's been some shit.
Just
And
Adam Levine running around trying to
and
be Mick Jagger.
ugh,
like
gross. The worst. But also Katy Perry did Super Bowl by herself. Katy
yes,
Perry's less time on the game.
Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga, although I
Yeah.
love Lady Gaga, but
I'm
um
not saying that any of these people didn't deserve it or couldn't do it, but
sure,
I'm just
sure, sure,
saying
sure.
in not in comparison either, but in history of the Super Bowl, like these women or people or bands were capable, and people are trying to say J Lo wasn't capable or that
Yeah.
she couldn't do it by herself and not split that time. And it's not about sharing. Like if it's like okay, you headline, but we kind of want Shakira as a guest. They had to split that small amount of time evenly amongst
Mm-hmm.
themselves and then add guest on top of that. So even like less time for themselves. Like terrible, terrible.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's Mr. Beyonce's fault. Mr. Jay-Z. That's
I
his fault.
saw
Like
him in that meeting. I'm like, come on, Jay. And I mean, maybe my commentary about Shakira not being able to hold her own was a little harsh, and that doesn't mean that I don't think she deserves it. I should say, obviously, I don't know nearly as much about Shakira than I and inherently do now about Jennifer Lopez through this podcast. So, if I'm not like Shakira does acting, but I think oh no, was she in the Scooby Doo movie? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But like regardless, right? Like clearly we like
yeah.
we've studied Jennifer now. We like know her career trajectory a little bit better. So
Yeah. I just think for me, like when people were like, "Oh, Shakira was the best part," or "Shakira could have did it by herself," but I don't know about J Lo. To me, I understand like Shakira is a global superstar. She just having an international, multilingual fan base is always probably gonna give you more access to people because now you've got like all of Latin America and wherever else that is in tune with like Latin music that is going to be like, listening to you versus just like us Americans who's like, you don't speak English? Like, oh God. Like, so
Yeah.
in respect to that, like Shakira's done World Cups and, definitely has a large fan base, but in the context of the Super Bowl, which is for American football, which is in America, like, I would think that most people, and I saw some of my people too who love to hate on J-Lo, you know, just being like, oh, Shakira was the best part. And I'm like, Shakira like that? Not to say that, people in America don't listen to Shakira or black people don't listen to Shakira,
Mm.
but I definitely think Jennifer Lopez was just way more widely seen casually. Like, even if you didn't directly listen to J-Lo, you've heard J-Lo songs.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say the same for Shakira besides Hips Don't Lie and Beautiful Liar because of Beyonce. Like, I just have never been into her or have seen her enough casually to be like, you know what, that new Shakira song, let me go, like, play that back or listen to her album. So, I mean, obviously, we're coming from very different cultures and a very uh, limited scope as Americans in some senses, but that's not to say Shakira couldn't do it or anything, but just that, like, I would think casually, most Americans probably were singing along to the J Lo parts more so than the Shakira parts.
Yeah.
Like, you might be grooving to the Shakira parts and be like, "Oh, look at her go!" But I didn't know any words. Like, I knew Hips Don't Lie, but
Mm.
yeah. So so great. Now that we've got like the hot takes out of the way, and it's hot as hell.
I know. It's a
Uh,
scorcher today.
yeah. Yeah, let's talk about it. I guess kind of chronologically or like however you took notes or points you want to bring up.
Sure.
Um,
Sure. Yeah. So the documentary starts out with her kind of
birthday.
ending, yeah, her birthday in 2019. And then she was kind of doing promo for Hustlers. Um, and so she talks about one of my first notes was for her to say in 2019 that her life is just getting started, on her 50th birthday. I think as someone who, you know, is in their like I'm going to be like in my 30s now. It's comforting to know. I feel like there's so much emphasis to fully live your life in your 20s and like that's it. And then everything after that is just like you're no longer living life for yourself because some people get married, have kids, and they're living life for other people. And that like their purpose in life changes.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like comforting to know. I really feel like the like your 40s and 50s are your like your years that where like life is going to just obviously take on a new meaning for you, and but we don't have the context for that because we're
Yeah.
not we're not there yet, but
I like to consider them like your don't give a fuck years because I feel like most people I know like are like you start caring less. Like you don't care
yeah,
as much what other people think. You don't care as much like to people please probably in general.
sure,
And so I think that's liberating when you get to that point of not giving any fucks and just being like
yeah,
do whatever I want. And I think you can tell that like in some of this like when she's like when she's talking well I yeah she's just ambitious in general but when she was
mhm.
talking about wanting to do singing acting and dancing and like why can't or starting her music career
Yeah,
she's like
she's
why
like, why
can't
can't I have
we do
all the
all the things.
things?
Yeah. I do want to say that in the beginning, my one of my first notes is her voiceover where she says, she's been battling to be heard, to be seen, and to be taken seriously.
Yes,
Because
yes,
I feel like we discovered that in our season of her,
hmm.
definitely. So I was like, ooh, yes, that's
And
good.
it and that moment ties in with a really lovely and like touching and kind of sad moment that we'll talk about later if we're going to do this chronologically, but they so she talks about the like cultural significance of making Hustlers and how, being in the movie industry for as long as she has been, has obviously worked in an industry that's run by men. And so being
Yeah.
able to be on set with mostly women and being able to do this really cool project, she's like, I want to not only just make movies that people are going or that are going to be enjoyed by people, but also have something to say. And we kind of noticed that in the later half of this season with Border Town and El Cantante and
Lila and
um,
Eve.
Lila and Eve and
Even
being,
second act, I would say, has
oh,
a
yeah,
message. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And that it celebrates women. And so that was really cool to see. We see a little bit of fun like behind the scenes with pole dancing, of course.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, it's like funny when you say the like not give a fuck years, because I think that's so difficult for a person like Jennifer Lopez because she is very clearly a perfectionist and wants to, because she's fought so hard to be taken seriously and to produce quality things that other people are going to enjoy. You can really see that side of her in the documentary and being, nervous about shooting things, like certain scenes in Hustlers, which I know we talked about in our earlier episode.
Yeah. I mean, so much of the Hustler stuff and the Oscar stuff, it was cool to see, but like, we did pretty damn good research, I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of it, like, we had talked about and seen prior.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of this too, like, I felt really kind of not vindicated, I guess, but I felt really proud of our season after watching this because I feel like we did a really good job, like, covering a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of watching this and be like, oh, I didn't know that, like, I was watching it like, yeah, I knew that, like, or like, I've seen that before, or like, oh, we talked about
Definitely.
that.
And like
So
the Vanity Fair article that she was reading when she was like sitting in a makeup chair or something, she was getting ready, and they're like, Vanity Fair wrote this article about you. They think it's Oscar worthy, and it's like sad to see her, start to get like, ooh, a little excited, but she still didn't even know if she was going to be doing halftime yet because the halftime was late with, or the NFL, whatever, was late on choosing an artist and deciding what direction they were going to go in. Um, and so to regardless of what happened with Hustlers, what a year that had been for her career wise to do this amazing movie, still go to the Golden Globes, and still be able to experience something that's just been so different from all the other roles that she's ever done. Yes, she's been sexy. Yes, she's shown her ass before, but to do it in this new way with this new production team and everything was really cool. And then on top of that, doing halftime and in a place where, not saying that things are any better, but in 2019 things were still very contentious for our country, and she made a note to say, I'm haven't really been that much into politics and I don't try to follow a lot of that. However, for me, it's not always about like, I don't see why people see some of the issues as politics where they're clearly social issues
yeah,
that are happening, human rights issues. And it doesn't have to be so politicalized. And she's like, I live in this America that I no longer recognize, and it's my responsibility to not be quiet anymore
yeah.
about some of these things.
One, I would like Trump trigger warnings
Oof.
before movies and stuff incorporate.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, oh, ooh, like,
Blech.
yeah, scrub that part of like my life out.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I have a question for you. How do you feel about people who say, like, I've definitely seen people who feel like it's weird or opportunistic when celebrities are typically not very political or don't really talk about issues or don't talk about issues, don't use their platform to like try to uplift or whatever, make opportunities for others, I guess.
Mm.
And what do you think about people who say that, and in terms of like her d- taking the opportunity at the Super Bowl of all places to try to like kind of touch on that stuff?
I don't agree with the initial comment. I think that it is not celebrities' jobs to be politicians, but I do believe that, to quote a little Spider-Man, with that power comes a responsibility. And if you have a platform, millions of other people can share your opinions or your social beliefs or your passions, but they don't have the same buying power as a celebrity would.
Yeah.
Um, might would is not a sentence, but that's okay.
It's
You know
okay.
what I mean? And
That's the teacher
so
in me.
I don't agree with people being like, oh, they should just stay in their lanes, or like, when people go up and do acceptance speeches at any award show and they bring up a social issue or a political issue, or they just even say the simple thing of like, go vote, and they're like, keep it separate. This is an award show. I think that it takes, in the Jewish community, the Yiddish word for that is chutzpah, which means guts. And I think it takes a lot of chutzpah for celebrities who just say, yeah, no, fuck it. Like, this is something that I feel very strongly about. And I'll be damned if I don't say anything about it, because
Yeah.
I have millions of people watching me and listening to me. Um, and they could potentially risk their career over it. And I think it was a incredibly smart move and bold move for Jennifer's choice to include the Latina girls like dance company, for them to come out in these like kind of constructed cages to represent immigrants and families coming in that are being detained, children that are being ripped away from their families. And 24 hours before the performance, the NFL was like, I don't know. Do we really want to, like you said, Bria? This is not a World Cup. This is American football, and the NFL is like the NRA. It's like one of the most American
Yeah.
organizations. And so for her to be like, you find a damn way to get this concept into the
Yeah.
show. And I think that it was really cool. And I get that, like, Shakira was born in Colombia. Get that she was like, I don't necessarily identify with that piece. But for J-Lo to say, well, I was born in the US and I'm proud to be an American, but I'm also very proud to be Latina, and I'm very proud to be a woman and to be able to uplift others. So I don't know. Long story short, don't I don't think it needs to be separate. I think
Yeah.
it's really cool when celebrities are able to pull off to talk about social issues.
Yeah. I think, and I think that this really helped me, not helped me, but really put the words that I probably was struggling to say a lot, like last season and on TikToks and whatnot. But I don't know if you watched it, but I reposted Hello Teffy's TikTok when she's talking about watching halftime. And she says that, we dehumanize celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of the criticism of being like, oh, well, you've never talked about stuff like this before, or your music's like, we said it. JLo's music career is about love. Like, she's never made like
Yeah.
a song that's like about social injustice or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she doesn't have like any kind of like Beyonce's Freedom or Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation or anything like that. But at the same time, like, she's a human being. And I think, you should be concerned if anybody seeing kids taken away from their parents and put in cages isn't bothered by that and bothered enough to say something. And um I saw two people commenting like, oh well, what did she actually do for them and whatnot. And it's like, again, like, these are celebrities in some sense. Like, sure, they probably have access to speak with lawmakers more easily than like the regular public, but at the end of the day, like, that's not her job. Like, we can only ask so much of them. Like, even as a constituent, I feel like there's only so much I can do. I can play my part in the system, but sometimes it's like, I can't, like, you can't, some people can, but not everybody can live in the streets protesting. Like, there are people who do that, and they definitely deserve the credit and all that, and probably way more than they're given. But
Mm-hmm.
we all have our roles to play. And I feel like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't in a visual front facing place if you say something, and you're damned if you don't say something. Where, like, I've seen people talk about, like, Puerto Rico has had hurricanes and issues, and people like, well, what has J-Lo done for Puerto Rico? And, like, she never says anything. And it's like, oh my God, like, sometimes these people don't say anything because they don't want it to be seen. Like, people say that they're publicity stunts. Like, oh, they're only doing this because it looks good. Or, and
Mm.
it's just like, God, like,
Can never be
that's the part.
happy.
Yeah, that's the part of fame that I don't think is easy or should be taken lightly. Like, you really have to have a tough skin for that. And, she talks about growing up with her mom and the women around her being tough and that rubbing off on her. So,
Mm-hmm.
kudos to her. I would have bitched out in celebrity probably, or like, I would have had like some tragic story, or I just went like, I'm out. I can't do this, just because of that kind of like criticism
Yeah.
and people saying no and all kinds of stuff like that. But I really think like the dehumanization of Jennifer Lopez makes it easy for people to continue to hate on her and not look at her as a human being who's flawed and who knows that. Like, even she opens with talking about, when she was little, loving musicals, but always kind of being known that I'm not the singer in my family,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not a singer. And we've heard her say that before, like, I'm not the greatest singer, but I work at it. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I get upset when I see people talk about that, like, okay, like, she knows that, like,
Yeah.
goddamn,
This
like,
is nothing nuanced for her.
yeah. Like, there's no room to be like, you know what, maybe she's just trying her best. Like, it's just always like, or like a lot of love. Like, there's no middle ground sometimes. And I am seeing that on Twitter, like, people who are watching it who aren't J lovers, like, I've never been much of a J Lo fan, but this documentary is like, good for her. She's such a hard worker. Like, we don't
Mm-hmm.
we don't appreciate her enough. And I'm like, yes, hallelujah. Like, finally. So I think that's what this documentary is for. Like, I asked fans, if there's anything they want us to talk about or anything they had to say. Someone did say that they felt like it was a little boring. And I could see, as a JLo fan, like, a lot of this stuff you probably know already. So
Yeah.
I feel like it really has done her justice in terms of people who are casual, like, oh yeah, I've seen some JLo movies, but I don't know a lot about her, like, to really put in perspective her career and her journey for them.
Yeah.
And for fans, this is just kind of like a sprinkle on the Sunday, like.
Ha. Yeah, I can see that for sure. I'm also really glad, even though we did get a little Ben Affleck talking head about when they had talked about what do they say? Jennifer said their appetite for my personal life overshadowed everything I did and achieved in my career. And like it was after the South Park episode had aired, Ben had, talked with Jennifer and said, how could something like this happen? And Ben said it that she shrugged and said, like, I'm Latina. I expected this to happen.
Yeah.
You don't expect it because you're white and you're a man.
Yeah.
Like, And so for that, for them to include that little talking head, I'm super appreciative of. And I'm glad too that I'm like cracking myself up because I'm thinking of the song I'm Glad. I'm sorry.
I listened to that on my way home, so
I'm glad that they didn't focus too much on her personal life and her relationships. Not to say that they haven't shaped who she is or contributed to maybe some of the choices that she did. Um, and there's so much more to her than that. And obviously, this doc was shot probably like pre Bennifer 2.0 and then cut and mixed and released this year. And that the purpose of this was not to be salacious about her personal life and her romantic relationships and stuff, even though she said, like, I like to write about love. And it's obviously something that gives a lot of people to talk about.
yeah.
But that this focused more on who she is at this point in her career. Now, if I could change anything about it, I wouldn't say it was boring, um, but it would have been really nice to have had more of those talking moments where if they did go like, let's say a lot in how our show is run, movie by movie, or like era
Mm-hmm.
of movie, like her rom-com years, her like independent producing years, her this and that, like for her to be able to talk specifically about, some of her favorite highlights in her earlier career, like that could have been a little nice.
Yeah.
Or talking about producing music and the different albums that she's done. Um, but I thought that overall, the story that the documentary was trying to tell was a nice weaving of her history as an artist, how that's contributing to her choices in the halftime show, um, and also where she's hopefully going to next.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up and I didn't have to because I saw a tweet that was like, I don't think, I love J-Lo, but I feel like Ben didn't need to be in the documentary.
It
And
was like 5 seconds though.
I'm not going to call out that Twitter user, but I did retweet or respond and I did say basically that like, you know, it's short. He's not in it like a ton. And that he made a great point and a point that I feel like out of all her exes only he could have made because he is the only white one.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was just like, that's a weird hill to die on to be like, well, why was Ben in this for one thing? And then, two, someone else wanted us to talk about that. Someone pointed out, well, I could say I'm pretty sure, but JLo #1 fan, who's always like on our
Mm-hmm.
stuff, pointed out that he's her soulmate. So who else, deserved to be in there? But I kind of think it would have been cool to hear from like Diddy, just from like his perspective and like being a part of her early music career
Yeah.
and talking about that. I doubt we would have got like Chris Judd or Ohani or maybe Mark could have
I
been
thought
in
maybe
there.
Mark would have said,
Um,
because they talked about their divorce very briefly, and how it impacted her. The kids were what, 4 or
yeah.
something when they were divorced, and then she talked about her time on American Idol and why that was like her like the best decision for her at the time to just kind of step back and take a break. And she's like, I'm a single mom and with twins, and having
Yeah,
her love life like publicly fall apart, it's tough.
yeah. And someone else said that maybe like there could have been more talking heads from like her parents or like her sisters
Mhm.
and kind of give maybe a more personal perspective into like Jennifer and
Mhm.
who she is as a person. But I think too we have to keep in perspective like the the point of this documentary and like the story it's trying to tell really is centered on the halftime of it all. And so yeah, we get good, I feel like good flashes of stuff about like
Hmm.
her music career and her movie career. Um Also, Lil Raj, I was like, oh my god, she put Lil Raj in here. She
And
didn't
Big
put like,
Sisk.
yes, she didn't put like just a soundbite or just like a flash of a review. She put a whole clip of our dude in there. So I was
Because
like,
we know that Lil Raj like always loved J Lo.
that, and he's just like, he's that dude, like that,
He's
he
that
is him.
dude.
Like,
Hmm.
don't play with Lil Raj, even though we disagree from some time to time.
Yes.
Um, what else? How do you feel that? I thought it was cool seeing her like cooking. Like,
Oh, I wrote celebs. They're just like us bickering at Thanksgiving. Like,
yeah.
that was funny. Oh, and I also loved, not that this has to be a focus on anything. Obviously, a lot of the outfits that she wore we've seen because she's worn them to like red carpet events that we
Yeah.
talked about. Um, but her Thanksgiving outfit with her natural curly hair, because
Yeah.
she has pretty short hair. I don't, it looks maybe on the thinner side, but she, when she's not wearing a wig or extensions, she usually has it up in some kind of a little messy bun. But for this Thanksgiving dinner, she had this like gorgeous, like little voluminous perm and a turtleneck, a nice little beige turtleneck. It
Yeah.
just was like a really cool look, and I think she looks great no matter what she does or what she wears, but I've always loved her. I don't know if her hair is naturally curly. I mean, we
I
know
think it is because
in her early
Emmy
days,
is. Yeah.
right.
But yeah, that look, she kind of, it reminded me of like her character Harley on Shades of Blue. Like her hair
Mm,
was like that
mhm,
a
mhm.
lot for that show. But yeah, that was cool seeing her too, like some small moments with her kids, like when Max kisses her and is like, "Oh, I hate lipstick." Like, that was cute, seeing her getting ready to do one of those, we sit down with Jennifer Lopez and she talks
Mhm.
about love, her Oscar potential nomination and all these things, and seeing her right before that, and Emmy comes in and is like, "Oh, I had to do this petition. Guess how many like signatures I got?" And also, mad props to them for getting all those signatures, because like I was like, okay, yeah, like 100, like, and then when she said how many, I was like, oh shit, like, good for you.
Yeah.
Like,
'Cause it was for a pet. She wanted like a gecko, right?
for, yeah, class, I'm assuming, like, hey, she's they're gonna be a problem to, and I'm
Yeah.
saying there because we just seen or found out that Emmy's pronouns are they and them. So
Mm.
I keep saying she sometimes, so I'm sorry, but
No, thank
they're gonna
you.
be a, yeah, problem
Thank you
to
for
reckon
reminding
with.
us. It was very sweet. I mean, Max wasn't in it too much, just those little clips here and there, but Emmy was in the halftime show too, so it was really cute to see their dynamic. Um,
Yeah, see them
and
rehearse
see them rehearse
together.
together, and with J-Lo's big it was like American flag feather thing. She's like, then I'm gonna open it and then you're gonna take it, and then like run off. And it
Yeah,
seemed like, it never seemed like she was forcing her to be this or sorry, forcing them to be this performer. um and that it truly looked like this was something that Emmy was like cool with doing, and
yeah,
also didn't really seem nervous. I mean, maybe that just comes
yeah,
with having Jennifer Lopez as your mom, but
and
like,
Mark Anthony,
and
like,
Mark Anthony as your dad, but like to get up on stage and to like sing kind of a high note is really impressive. I think for me, if I if the shoe was on my foot, of course I would love to perform, but like I'd be fucking shitting my pants. And maybe they were. I don't know. But I liked how they highlighted that piece. We all know Jennifer is very proud to be a mom and has like loves her kids so much, and probably her blended family.
yeah.
Um but to see that side of it was very touching.
I will say that when I initially watched the Super Bowl, like, sometimes JLo has so much energy in these performances where, like, maybe she's not focused on, like, hitting the right note or, being in tune, but she's just like kind of yelling and
Yeah, you
like,
gotta
we can do
put.
it right, like, moments like that. And so when I was watching the Super Bowl halftime performance, when it happened, I was like, ooh, like, and then when Emmy came out, I was like, oh, she eating her mama up, like, or they're
Mm,
eating their mama up, like, they really have a really strong, naturally talented voice. So,
yes.
I was kind of like, ooh, that was a bad decision, but like, I don't think Jennifer Lopez cares. She knows, that she's not the strongest singer, and she knows how talented and beautiful Emmy's voice is. And I've seen her, nurture that in other things.
Yes, and it proves that they're singing live. Because when
Yes.
you hear those hiccups, I'd much rather hear someone's voice cracking, someone not being able to hit the note, or some kind of vocal strain, because that shows me that they're actually fucking trying. Um,
Yeah.
and I think with a Super Bowl show, with the exception of maybe, some of the bands, like, you know, if you're just like playing a guitar and you're like staying in one place, you may not be dancing, right?
Yeah.
So I have so much respect for performers like Jennifer, like Gaga, like Janet, who dance, and you got to know that they're so out of breath, but they're still able to sing live.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Yeah. Speaking of other Super Bowl performers, I had to do a little research myself because I was like, I've seen this talked about before because obviously the iconic and problematic Janet Super Bowl
Sure.
happened in 2004. But like after that, I remember it being a big deal, like not only Jay-Z coming on, but like even like Beyonce Super Bowl was a big deal because it was like the first time since Janet that someone who wasn't an old white man, like, or, these very safe performances. Like, I
Yes.
remember years where it was like The Who
The
and
Red Hot
like,
Chili Peppers.
yeah, and like, I love rock too, but I definitely appreciate the Super Bowls where there's some choreo, there's some, movement, there's some visuals going on and not such. The Who I remember was dope because they had like this big stage that was a screen, and I remember like their Who logo, like that Target looking
Mm-hmm.
thing being on there and stuff. But yeah, definitely playing it safe on the Super Bowls. Like no titties possibly coming out on that stage. So in reflection of that change, there hadn't been a Latina performer since like Gloria Estefan, I think. And that's crazy to think
Wow.
about. But yeah, just like putting that into perspective too. Like how much the Super Bowl had changed since Janet Jackson's incident, and how much the NFL went out of their way to kind of make it like safe. Like, and to also see her use this opportunity to say something despite like all that history and stuff. Like it could have easily backfired on her, where it's like Jennifer Lopez tries to uh bring immigrants to America, like, or some weird twisted Fox News take where, like, Jennifer Lopez doesn't want to build the wall. She has children in cages on her Super Bowl performance. Like, cancel her, like something like that. Which
Yeah.
I didn't see anything like that because that's not the neck of the woods I stay in. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were people who did see that and were like, off with her head. Like, so.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um, Another thing I note is that at the point where she's talking about like how the media has narrowed in on her relationships and her personal life, and also being like this running joke, she shows the footage from South Park. She shows Jimmy Kimmel saying like, if Jennifer Lopez ever said I couldn't sing, I'd be like, neither can you. And I was just like, oh,
Mm-hmm. Jemai.
SSH. Which reminded me of Marry Me when, she's watching Jimmy Fallon
Mm-hmm.
joke at her expense and she
Mm-hmm.
gets her all emotional. And then Conan O'Brien, his was terrible when he's like, "Oh, we have our intern who's Ben
Oof.
Affleck and the Help," like, and had like
Yes.
some little old Latina lady who's a maid. Like, first of
Yeah,
all,
that
fuck
was
you for
bad.
embarrassing that lady,
Yeah.
and then for trying to make that point. And then that one white chick, I don't know who she is, but fuck you for being all like, sister needs to keep it real. Like, I can't even, like,
Oh, and they were like, she's getting too much to be a diva. She needs to keep
yeah.
it. Yeah. It's like, okay.
It was like, calm down. I want to say Becky or Karen and all those things, but like,
Calm down,
hold
Karen.
your horses. Like, who are you? What did you think too? This is kind of jumping, but I did note, since we're just talking about late host and
Yeah.
media, David Letterman's joke about her ass.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, and they focused on that too in her body. And I like how, she's always represented, I think, a very positive body image. Sure, she's used some like diet culture language out there before. We know she eats very clean, which whatever that means, but like she doesn't drink a lot and she obviously works the hell out of her body. And takes, pride in her appearance, but even as a younger gal, she always stayed out of the spotlight for being I don't know, maybe she's just someone who always has come across to me as like very like body neutrality and like loving what you already have. And she's like, listen, I come from a family of women with curves, and I always knew that about myself. And I remember as a kid, whenever I would hear Jennifer Lopez being talked about in the media, if it wasn't about her personal life, romantic relationships, whatever, it was about her butt. Um, and we always make that joke of the assets, making puns of you have the assets to whatever. But I don't know. I think her response to that was just like, yeah, and
yeah.
so it's not
Yeah,
like I didn't turn around one day and be like, oh wait, what?
and
It's like I knew that about myself. Who gives a shit?
two, it's like, especially in this new culture where, like, people were pointing out that like Kim Kardashian maybe reversed her BBL, and Chloe, and they're kind of, and Kylie, and they're kind of getting back to this like thinner, less curvy shape. Like, J Lo is natural. Like, it might not be like crazy, like bootylicious, like in person, but I think it's very, I've always said this is very proportionate to her body,
Mm-hmm.
but it looks rather like voluptuous on her body, so it's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to not notice, you
Yeah.
know that she has a wagon. uh but like, she's never, like, she said, the ideal in Hollywood at that time was like real thin,
Blonde, tall,
and
you
she
know,
was, yeah, happy
yeah.
to embrace it versus like,
Yes.
you know
Yes.
extreme dieting to try to be something she wasn't, like.
Yeah.
And that's something to honor, like. And even like women like Beyonce being able to, at like 20 something, make a song like Bootylicious and be like, this is what I'm working with, all this jelly, like, and you can't handle
Mm-hmm.
it, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna embrace it, before things like BBLs and butt implants were a big thing. Those,
Yeah.
they kind of paved the way in terms of like Hollywood standards of that.
Can't
And
keep your eyes off my fatty daddy.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a good point. And re- you know, I don't know what I wanted to say, just as like a yes and to that, in that when she was referring back to what the standard was and still is. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
People, this Hollywood society, however you want to say it, thinness is more valued, and you are dehumanized if you deviate from that curve, no pun intended. And if
Yeah.
you have natural physical features about you that look different, I'm just going to throw her name out there, not to throw her under the bus, but if you have a different body type from Nicole Kidman, like how are you going to make it
Yeah.
in this place? And I think we're getting better with more body acceptance and uh with more diverse roles and diverse natural bodies um in there, but it's so hard to undo that mindset. So I'm glad that she touched up on it and that she just said like, and that it didn't affect her in a way where she could have gone down a really horrible path and developed more of disordered eating, and she could have been easily on those tabloids around that same time, the same tabloids we are getting with like a rail thin Lindsay Lohan, Nicole
Brittany
Richie, Paris
Murphy.
Hilton, Brittany Murphy, even Hilary Duff. They were all struggling with that at that time.
Yeah.
um, and that she very much just embraced who she was and what she naturally had.
Yeah. Moving on. Let's I say we get into these award shows,
Okay.
please. I do want to point out though, like, well, maybe I'll save that for the end, like, our final thoughts. But yeah, the award shows. Okay, well, whew. I did not think that seeing the Hustlers stuff and the Oscar nom stuff again and the I didn't really pay attention to the Golden Globes when we talked about Hustlers because
Mm-hmm.
so much of what I had been hearing and seeing is like, oh, the Oscars snubbed her, so we focused a lot on that. But seeing her be nominated, get ready, talk about like if I win, or
Mm-hmm.
also green's her lucky
The
color.
green
And
thong was cracking me up.
I I was like, "Hello, green thong." Like
Yes.
that is something. This might be gross. If she wore it, I don't want it. But I was like, that is a hot auction item to be like. Be like Jayla's green thong. Not that she wore, but like
Yes.
shown in the documentary. Like,
Handle it with your like
anyways,
white gloves.
not worn, please. But
Yes.
I know some men pay for that. But anyways, just because it was shown and it was so funny for her to actually like be like pick it up and be like, oh, like.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, okay, probably cut that out. That's so disgusting, Bria. Anyways, not having focused on the Golden Globes before and seeing all the Oscar stuff again, I didn't realize how upset I would get again. Like I
Yeah.
was I was back on that, like ready to like rant and rave about the Oscars. So obviously we have a whole episode on that, so please go listen to that if you have not. I have a feeling anyone who's listening to this episode probably will or have already.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to look at stuff we didn't talk about, and I didn't think there was something we could touch on this time around besides, hey, go listen to that episode, we talked in depth about this. But I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking, because when I watched it, I was upset again, and so I tweeted, like, I still don't understand how Laura Dern just won that Oscar. Not even her being nominated, but like how she won. Like, what
Both
was the
Golden
thing?
Globe and Oscar.
Which is kind of rare. Usually, the Golden Globe is like a consolation prize for the Oscar loser.
Mm-hmm.
It's rare that you. And I think she swept award season that year. Like she won a BAFTA, she won like all the leading
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
awards,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of like Will did for King Richard. Which I'm wondering if that's like a new trend,
Hmm.
that they're actually gonna be predictive of the winner versus like, oh, this one, like sometimes they give it to like the runner up, like, or the Oscar winner traditionally doesn't win the Golden Globe or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But so I was like, can someone tell me why Laura Dern won an Oscar for that performance? Like, anybody. And no one could. But I, tried to do my due diligence and research as quickly as possible, you know, and I'm Googling Laura Dern Oscar to see, like, after she won, people talking about, her win, why she won, or anything of that nature. And no one really talks about like, oh, like I can think of like Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich, like the performance in that, like so easy to be like, oh, she put on this outstanding performance as the single mother who blah blah blah, Erin Brockovich, you know.
Sure, sure.
Marriage Story is just like, oh, congrats to Laura Dern, she won for Marriage Story, and then like her history. And I did see an article too that was like why Laura Dern's Oscar win means a lot for LGBTQ people, and I was like, why? And so I read that, and that's only because she was on the Ellen show when Ellen came out, and so she's kind of blackballed. I don't want to say kind of, she's blackballed from Hollywood because of her adjacentness to a queer woman. And I was like,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
sure, but it's not like Laura Dern is gay or trans or bisexual or anything like that. But I guess feeling vindicated for Hollywood having blackballed someone because of how
Hmm.
close they were in proximity to someone. Okay, sure. Um, and then when I was reading, so on Vanity Fair, I did not know Laura Dern's parents are
Bruce
Oscar
Dern.
nominated actors.
Sure are. She comes from a family of Oscar folks.
Yes. So I was like, ding, 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 like nepotism at its finest.
Mm-hmm.
And it says she attended her first Oscars at age 7. Like, I mean,
Yep.
the way into to in context, like I'm looking at this in context of like, okay, why did J-Lo get snubbed, why did Laura Dern win,
Mm-hmm.
and to have watched and did our season where this woman has worked from the Bronx, a dancer, a backup dancer, not even like the dancer like
Right.
Paula Abdul or something, that movies, music, all that stuff, from nothing essentially, no leg up, and not even get nominated. Crazy to me. And then again, like I said, no one being like, oh, Dern had an amazing performance as, this divorce lawyer who's gritty or, takes charge or anything like that. It was just like, yeah, she won for Marriage Story. Congrats to her. Here's like some of her career life highlights and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
highlighting she was nominated twice for other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that just pissed me off all over again. And then there are these moments in this article where it's like, um she gave shout outs to women directors Lulu Wang and Honey Boy director Alma Harrell, and
Mm-hmm.
suggested that the way forward was to focus less on the lack of awards being presented to women and more on systematic inequality of resources and on the lack of second chances given to women and diverse voices generally. And I was just like, not that that's her fault, but like, what a blown moment for the Oscars to actually fucking do some of that stuff by nominating a Latina actress and giving her an award. I also
Yes.
didn't know that apparently shorter supporting performances tend to fare better in the Best Supporting Actress category. So her character was in Marriage Story for 18 minutes and 36 seconds, and J-Lo was in Hustlers for 53 minutes and 9 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently that's a factor, which just makes me like, okay, Oscars, like maybe you need to have that as a criteria. Like you can't be nominated for Best Supporting Actress if you
Give
are
you,
in the movie for this
yeah.
more than this amount of time.
Right. Like there needs to be some kind of like minute mark, like less than 20, less than 30. I mean, I get that it's a supporting role. Um, but to have, it wasn't in a, it wasn't for me, it wasn't just the lack of recognition and nominations for Jennifer, but it was just all aboard for Hustlers, Constance Wu, and all the people who worked.
Lorene Scarfaria, the
Yeah.
director, like,
Yeah. All the people who worked on that show, or sorry, that movie, for them to not even get editing, writing, soundtrack. I want to make love in this club, like, I mean, even I feel like sound mixing is like a pity award. Like, we're not really here to
The
watch
lighting in
Oscars.
Hustlers was
The
great.
lighting, the like, yeah, just but so it's that chapped my ass a little bit to like rehash that piece of it. And,
Yeah.
of course, Jennifer will say, it's okay, it's all right. She tries her best to like put on this brave face, but there's a moment that I kind of alluded to in the beginning of the episode, where she's in bed and she's reading, and
Yeah.
this is actually what got me. And I don't know if it's because I'm like channeling that Leo energy, and that's like my one little small identifier for me to connect with her. But will never know a defeat on that level, but we know what defeat feels like
Yeah.
and what criticism feels like, not in the eyes of millions of people, but we know on a small scale. Um, and so watching her, she's in bed reading this bit, and it's not necessarily a negative bit, but she says, she's quoting the article about being a criminally underrated performer and to get her due from an acclaimed, from like the acclaimed creme a la creme, like film world.
Yeah.
And for her to see her get emotional about that was emotional for me. I teared up. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. I teared up at that part
Yeah.
because I think you can say that you do this for your fans, for your family, for your heritage, for what you stand up for, what you believe in. But like you had said, she's still human and she still has feelings, and it losing doesn't feel good.
Yeah. I will say that I think this documentary and like that moment and just a culmination of like her showcasing all this stuff and coming out of that and saying, I don't do this for the awards and stuff. Like we read that after the Oscars thing and I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, right. Like I know you want to be like, you know what? You want to be positive and affirmative and all that stuff and be like, you know what? I it would have been great to win, but at the same time, like, I'm okay. Like, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
But to see her, like, she was fine after the Golden Globes. I'm sure she was irritated that she didn't even get nominated for the Oscar and
Mm-hmm.
upset about that. But, like, I actually believed her, like, seeing her say that and then seeing all of this work she put into having a message during the halftime show and including those young Latina dancers, dance girl troupe, and you know, being able to, and this is also to like the contrarians out there who are like, JLo's not a legend. She may be an icon. Is, she might be talented. Like, I feel like as an audience, we don't really get to quantify that for celebrities. Like you can definitely own your people and who you stand, and it's very easy as fans to be like, yeah, she's a legend and she's an icon, all those things. But at the same time, like it's not for us to decide and label. Like I think we've gotten a little bit love drunk on the power of social media,
For
and
sure.
like if we say this enough, then it's true or it's not true. So if we say enough that J-Lo isn't a legend, then it's true, and that's not true. Like, and two, I honestly feel like, and maybe this, I've been battling with like some of my takes regarding JLo, like whether this makes me like a sellout or like a coon, so to speak, as a black person. But I just feel like sometimes like stay in your lane as black people sometimes. Like Jennifer Lopez is not ours. She's like ours adjacent because she has a love for hip hop and growing up in New York and the Bronx, and obviously she makes R&B and she loves R&B like class, like the Supremes, and you can hear that in her influence. But at the same time, like she's a Latina icon. Let
Mm-hmm.
Latin people say she's not an icon or a legend. That's not up to us to decide. I'd
Mm-hmm.
be pissed if like we get pissed when like white critics or anything speak on black art and music and are like, Beyonce's garbage, like, or this isn't that revolutionary. And it's like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't even know our culture to say that. Like, who asked you? And sometimes it's like, who asked us? Like, so, like, have your opinions. Like, we all have them, but also, like, also know your place sometimes of like, this isn't the discussion for me to like, maybe we need to listen as well, just like we want people to listen to us, just like women want men to listen to us. It's not always, oh, not all men, like just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And just listen and let some of the, like, let Latinas have that conversation. There's plenty, and she's not uh just universally loved by Latinas. I've definitely seen Latinas like say like, just like some black women about Beyonce, where it's like, oh, she does too much, or she's everywhere, or she's not that great, or she's overrated. There's always going to be people like that, even within your own people. But at the same time, like, I'm sure the majority of people are like, you know what, she's done a lot for us. There
Mm-hmm.
are young actresses and singers like Selena Gomez, or even, hell, look at Bad Bunny and J Balvin, like being able to be on stage with her. Do you think they would have been on the Super Bowl anytime soon had it not been for Jennifer Lopez and Shakira? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, maybe, I don't know, but like, those are ways that she has opened doors for people, and it might not be perfect, it might not be always the best like acting role choices, but like, she's doing what she can. Like, god damn it. Like, get off her back.
Here, here.
So I didn't even know what I was talking about. But
Well, going back to the point about, is she an icon?
oh yeah. And not doing this for awards and stuff. Like,
Right.
I actually believed her because I feel like I was able, and not that I wasn't able to see it before, but like, you do get a little bit more perspective on like the work it takes, and the way that um like, I don't like to like idolize celebrities, but like, they do create things that like help shape culture and give the voices and highlight things and may like touch your life in some way. And so it's hard to like discredit people who do that just because maybe it's not for you. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that there's not some little, like, look at those little girls who are so excited for
You're
her
my
to watch them.
idol. I look up to
Yeah.
you. And for them to work with someone as big of a star power in their community at a
And who
similar
started
dance
as a
company,
dancer. Yeah.
exactly, like working in perhaps a similar dance studio that she started out as a kid, like to show to girls who look like her, who sound like her, to be like, this is like, your dreams are valid. And oh gosh, what was the line? Sorry, I'm going to be annoying and move my paper. It was like, being in this industry, to be a woman of color who has the audacity to pursue her dreams can often be scrutinized.
Yeah. Or like the line where I think it's more towards the end where she's like, I may have been the first Latina in that room, but hopefully when I leave that room, I won't have been the only. Like,
Yes.
hopefully someone else or more
Yes.
will come after me. And that's what it's about. And it's not even about people who are fans of J-Lo. Like, someone can open doors for you and you not necessarily intentionally are following behind them. Like, it's like when people try to discredit Janet Jackson's career, and I'm like, people don't have to be like, oh, Janet is my, like, that's who I grew up looking up to. Like, just the things she did from like an industry standard will
Mm-hmm.
help people or have shaped things
Mm-hmm.
in ways that you don't know. Just like, our ancestors and people who came before us have shaped the world we live in today, good or bad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whoever the fuck came up with capitalism, like, you know, I'm not looking up to that person, but hey, like, he has shaped, or it's definitely a he, so I'm not even gonna play that game. He has shaped the world we live in, and, untouchable way. Like, so I might not like be like idolizing that, but like there's no doubt about like, oh yeah, like he had an impact. Like, um but two, going back to the Golden Globes, like we did with the Oscars, I was like, who votes for the Golden Globes? Like, what's that process like? So I looked it up,
Ooh.
and so the Golden Globes is comprised of HFPA members, but basically it's journalists, and each, uh, where is it? Not what's their voting process. Okay, who's in the HFPA and how do you become a member? Courtesy of Variety. Okay,
Okay.
the HFPA consists of Southern California based journalists who cover Hollywood for news outlets in 55 countries, including nations in Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East. The
Mm-hmm.
membership has remained fairly consistent for the past few decades. In 2019, there were 87 voting members. The HFPA accepts new members every February and March with the rules for membership listed. Among the requirements are at least 4 articles published in international publications each year and proof of payment for the articles. Only a few new members are accepted each year. So I just I think that's probably why she was nominated for the Golden Globe and not the
Mm-hmm.
Oscar,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the media clearly was like, "Oh, this is Oscar worthy." And like this is clearly like potential for her to, and so I think the media definitely saw what the Oscars maybe should have seen in Hustlers. And
Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't surprise me that they nominated her.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like very curious like on the voting consensus there.
Yeah.
Um I think that I think too being in the media probably, again like we said the Oscars, like her celebrity factor maybe didn't help in terms of like them seeing her be in the media for her personal life and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature as well. Um, but yeah, like I feel like they should have got it right more than the Oscars. Like I feel like we're used to being mad at the Oscars, but like these journalists, like they're not people who are in the film industry necessarily, like the Oscars group, like that's comprised of directors, filmmakers, writers, other actors. And I don't know, like I'm just curious, like why they didn't let her win.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not that the Golden Globe win would have been a petty win. I don't think that's always the trajectory. I could be wrong, but sometimes I think that it's not always the case if people get a Golden Globe that they'll get the Oscar or not. Um, but again, it kind of talks about, or going back to what we were talking about with Shakira, out of all those women who were nominated, most of them, if actually all of them, had already previously been nominated or had won something in other circumstances. And I'm willing to bet that they're, I mean, yeah, there's it's so hard to compare, but like, I don't know, or it is easy to compare. Like their lives were so different from JLo. Like I'm willing to bet that they didn't have to like live that. She was like, I was basically a gypsy when she like dropped out of school to be a dancer. She can get her parents' approval for that and to work her way from not having rich and famous parents to help them. And I like Laura Dern, like Florence Pugh, Scarlett Johansson, Kathy Bates. I mean, it's not a matter of being disrespectful towards them and their career, but like I just think it would have been so significant and meaningful, not just for Jennifer, but for her fans and for her community.
Yeah. And that goes to say like I noted too that I never like when she's talking about not being nominated and stuff, she's like, it's hard for my team too because they work so hard as well
Mm-hmm.
to put me in these things. Like I'm thinking Elaine and Benny mostly, but like her makeup people and stuff too. I'm sure like they're uh hyped for her, but
Yeah,
Benny
they're
and
all
Elaine,
rooting for her.
yeah, but Benny and Elaine more so because they're like her manager and her producing partner. So like Elaine helped write Hustlers and wrote Second Act, and it's helping her pick projects or find projects. And Benny too is managing her and kind of doing the same thing. And they've been with her for a really long time. So, it's like one of those like we've put this much work in and to see something come to fruition. Um, is rewarding at the end of the day. It doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the end all be all, but like, it's nice. Like, so I never thought about that. Like, I never thought about like those people also like kind of feeling snubbed as well and having feelings about it. Like, like, I always would consider like, sure, you're like bummed for your friend, but like at the end of the day, too, like, they're getting paid to help her achieve
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what she intends to achieve. And so, in some sense, I could see like them feeling like maybe we failed too because
Yeah.
maybe we didn't do enough.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just had never thought about that. So I thought that was like a good point that
Mm-hmm.
or a good thing that sparked like, oh wow, I never realized that. I also never realized like I never thought about like how long it takes to set up the Super Bowl halftime stage.
Oh
Like,
yeah, it's so much back and forth on agreements of what will be in there, how to mix the songs, how to probably getting Bruce Springsteen's permission to use Born in the USA and um
also, fuck that guy who was like, I don't know, the female symbol might be too much. Like, he hadn't even thought about the cages. She's like, oh, I thought you were going to be mad about the cages.
yeah.
But he was like, it might be divisive. Being a woman is divisive. Like, come on, let's pick our battles here.
Totally. He tried to backtrack a little. He was like, it's a power or it's a symbol that I stand by and I'm all for. He's like, I'm just trying, like, I thought he was just trying to catch the like red flags. But yeah, how Jennifer was like, I thought he was going to have an issue with the children in the cages, but okay. Like, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. It's a nice, it's an hour and a half like good segment of it. I feel like that's a perfect length for a documentary. Have you seen any like I know you've seen like the stuff out there for like Beyonce and Janet Jackson's documentary we talked about for a little bit, but
Oh, God.
have you
Yes.
seen like Lady Gaga's or Katy Perry's or any
Okay.
other like music
Okay.
specific documentaries?
Um, No, and that could just be like, again, like the circles that you choose to move in,
Sure.
you're only going to see so much. And I had to take a Twitter break. So
Sure.
Twitter is not the world. And just a reminder, but I did see Beyonce fans, and I've said this, and if you watch TikTok, I have a huge Beyonce poster in my
Hmm.
room if I TikTok in there. So, again, Beehive, like everyone was like, "Oh my god, she like Beyonce is a trendsetter." Like, clearly like J Lo's copying her with like halftime and homecoming, and they both start with H, and they're both on Netflix.
It's
And
so stupid. They both
and
start with H. So does horse shit.
I'm glad that you are,
That's so dumb.
getting to the same destination and not necessarily on the same train that I am on. Just for like, there is no, we did not like talk about these points or anything
Nope.
or anything. So that is
Baby, we
completely
free
organic.
balling today.
But yeah, and for me, it's just like sometimes, like, I have to I don't feel old, and older people are always trying to be like, "Oh, you're so young still." And I'm just like, "Damn it." Like I just said this to someone, like, "When am I going to be old enough?" Like, but
So yeah, that
sometimes
means I
too,
can't be
like,
taken seriously?
right. But like I was in a cuz Beyonce just released her song This Is Where We Are in Life.
For sure.
She just released her new single, and I was in a Twitter space, which is like just sound and certain people talking. It's kind of like a live podcast, but a
Hmm.
lot of it's just people shooting the shit.
Oh,
So people were
interesting.
talking and giving their opinions on the song, and some people were, at some point they stopped talking about the song and just were like, "Oh, so like when did you become a stan? Like when did you become a fan of Beyonce?" And I was pleasantly surprised that there were some people who were like my age, who were like, "Oh, like, in 99 Destiny's Child and stuff." But a lot of times I see like fans who are like, "Oh, I hope Beyonce tours before she retires. I've never seen her live." And that could be just like um an age thing, like they weren't old enough or in their or money to and access, like their parents wouldn't pay for it, or they didn't have enough money to see
Mm.
her. Or
Mm.
like I've seen people be like, "Oh, like I want her to have a solo album without her husband," like, or like a tour without her husband, like, or something like that, because they've never seen her like solo or something. Where
Mm.
it just is like, damn, how old are you? And like there are young fans like who just don't have perspective sometimes, and definitely, like, I'm not saying that they don't do their research, but it's just like, one, music documentaries aren't new. Like, it's not a new concept. Like,
Yes.
there are people before Beyonce who did this. Like, so for it to be like this thing of comparison is ridiculous. Like, we used to get this shit nightly on VH1, like, and
Yeah.
MTV. That's
Making
what
the
those channels
music.
were.
They were
Behind the music,
behind
making
the
the
music.
video,
Yeah, yeah.
diary. Yeah, all
So
those things. So I'm just like,
yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
So I've seen people definitely say Homecoming. I've seen people though counter that with like, well, Katy Perry made a whole like that was in theaters, right? Like her
Part of me was
documentary.
in theater, yeah.
Justin Bieber's
Yeah,
like
My World. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yes,
Forgot about
Janet's
that.
just came out. But hell, her career goes back longer than that. So
Mm-hmm.
uh and just, yeah, I'm just like, oh my god, you guys are just reaching like so
Truly.
hard, like.
Truly.
And yeah, so that's my 2 cents. Very, not even 2 cents, that's my $5. Like, but
That's my
what else, what
that's
else?
my half dollar. Or are people gonna come for me because that also starts with an H. I seriously can't. That's the dumbest fucking
I
thing
love
I've
that.
ever heard.
But yeah,
Whatever.
so that was another social media point that I was just like, what in the world are what's wrong
Yeah.
with people?
Now, the going back to the halftime show, going back to splitting it with Shakira. Obviously, I know this isn't Shakira's documentary, and
Mm-hmm.
I have to be fair, I did not do my research, so I'm sure there's probably interviews on it or people asking are like, "Oh, how'd you feel about that comment that J Lo made about having to split the show?" But I would have been also curious to hear her perspective on the matter too. Like if she was just like, I'm just happy to be here, like I'm happy to like have been asked to perform, or if she was also like, yeah, I see the bullshittery of it, of like having to split
Yeah.
my time. Not that I don't respect Jennifer or whatever, but like,
Yeah. I I don't know. It's hard because this is J-Lo's documentary, and it
yeah,
wasn't necessarily set out to be like about the halftime show. I think she just was like, I'm turning 50. Let's film like this year and see what
yeah,
happens. And a
mm-hmm.
lot of stuff happened to her. But I did think it was interesting that we didn't really get to see a lot of like them kind of behind the scenes, or just like we like, and I think that's just like how collaboration works now. Sometimes people make songs together and it's just like, oh, I'll send you the track. Like, they're not in the studio together. And that surprised me to see that and two, just thinking about JLo's schedule, like she was still promoting and doing stuff for Hustlers in the middle of working on trying to figure out her part of the halftime show. And so they have
Mm-hmm.
like on the phone conversations
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. And then there is a point where they have rehearsal together and they're talking about stuff and trying to
Mm-hmm.
flesh out stuff. Um, but yeah, it would have been nice, like even if like during that rehearsal, like they pulled Shakira aside for a second and was just like, "Oh, how is it? Like, what is it like? Are you excited? Um, what's your relationship like with Jennifer or
Mm-hmm.
anything
Mm-hmm.
like that?" To like also help squash a little bit of that where um I don't want to say like JLo should have asked Shakira to speak nicely about her so that it's like, oh yeah, Shakira loves JLo. Like there's no animosity
Sure,
there.
sure.
But yeah, I just think they were just like, they were both probably doing stuff, and maybe Shakira was like, I don't know where she lives, but maybe she's like in her home country or wherever she lives and working on her part there and stuff like that. So it just
Mm-hmm.
seemed really separate to me. But it would have been cool, I think, to hear her talk about it. And I haven't seen anything about her talking about like the misquoted and out of
Out of
context
context.
articles. But I think she knows, like,
Sure.
that, yeah, and I'm sure she's seen the documentary or something, or maybe JLo sent her a text and was like, I didn't say that, and like was able to send her a clip and be like, this
Mm-hmm.
is what was
Mm-hmm.
said. So, but yeah. Well, didn't she say that to Shakira? Like when that was when they were on the phone, right? And Shakira was like, "Well, I don't know how much time they're giving me." And then JLo was like, "Oh, I'll tell you." Like basically, they want us to split
Oh, yeah.
the time, which is stupid. Like they should have given us more time.
Right. Longer
Um,
show.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was separate that she said it was stupid to have two people do it,
That
but
was a different conversation. But yeah, it's a bummer that out of
but
everything of this documentary, that's what they're focusing on and putting there.
But even in context, it's again not about doing it with Shakira or anything like that. It's just, again, historically, it had not been shared as two headliners. It
Right.
had been shared as a headliner who can invite whoever they want, but not so much like we're going to have two big stars do this.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's been more of that, but still, like, it's just again out of context and stupid. like my favorite quote from Nene from Real Housewives now is when Phaedra is lying about her pregnancy and she's like, that is just so stupid. Like this whole thing all the time stuff is just like, it's just dumb. Like, and the amount that all that kind of stuff spread so fast. And I feel like it's a character trait to like, or like a sign of decent character if people can actually click on a link, read an article, maybe watch a clip. Also, the documentary hadn't come out. I said that in my TikTok. I was like, first of all, can we watch the documentary before we start like riffing off hot takes and hating on like something she said without proper context? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and if you want proper context, there is context if you look for it. Like people who have actually like press journalists, I was seeing people who were like, I actually have seen the documentary already, and she did not say that, or that's not what that was about.
It's a fragment
And
of what it was about.
yeah, and it just goes to show like how easy like misinformation is spreading like with social media and whatnot, and how quickly people are quick to jump on something without being like, you know what, let me look into this. Like people are just like, oh, JLo said this. Oh, she's hating on Shakira. Like I wouldn't be surprised she said that. Of course she did. Like who does
Mm-hmm.
she think she is? And I'm just like, oh my god, you guys don't want to understand. That's fine. Just say
Mm-hmm.
that. But geez, like, ugh, I can't. Um, anything else?
No, honestly, I feel like we're a little bit over hour and a half now. I feel like that's a good sweet spot considering that the documentary was that length as well. I felt like I brought up I mean, we kind of like we hit the ground running with this one. We didn't even waste time.
Yeah,
Um,
I did ask. Oh, sorry.
oh no, no, go ahead.
I did ask people on social media if there was something they'd like us to mention, which of course was some stuff we just naturally talked about. I don't think we really talked about this, but like the racism that comes, and I think that might go with like the body convo a little bit, but like and with Laura Dern, I feel like that was kind of
Sure,
like me
sure, sure,
being
sure.
like, look at this white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
But uh the racism and interracial, well, we talked about her and Ben, so interracial relationships. So I don't know, I feel like we talked about that a little bit. Obviously J-Lo has had, again, she didn't get anything handed to her, and she's definitely worked hard for it, and she's made strides and opened doors for
Mm-hmm.
people,
Mm-hmm.
and that gets overlooked. And listen to our season as we talk about, like, roles that were intended for white women that,
Sandra Bullock could have
she,
had half the roles that J-Lo
yeah,
had.
that her choosing to do rom-coms to highlight that, like, hey, I could do this too. Of course we did have some problem with that as well, like not being visibly Latina a lot of the times,
Right.
but I feel like that's like you don't always need people in your ethnicity, race, culture to uh be like these extremes. Like sometimes we just need people who doing cute like little movies and to represent. Like we could
Sure.
be cute too. Like
Mm-hmm.
so that's my thoughts on that. We definitely talked about how she's an underdog, and not, even though she hasn't achieved as so much, I think,
And
with like,
wants to serve underdogs as well, because the documentary ends with her in a business meeting. She opens up an entrepreneurship to uplift underserved Latina businesswomen who are trying
yes.
to get their dreams going. And what an amazing opportunity for her to be able to say, I have the financial stability to help others achieve what they want to do. And I think that that was really a great way to kind of end the documentary. And they kind of gave these little stats of like what she achieved in terms of like record sales, streams, fan bases on social media. But then after that, while the credits are rolling, they're showing her in this business meeting. And she's like, obviously, we're coming to you to have money, but like you have money and you can use it for this like great opportunity to help others who can, who are very deserving. Um, and then the last like bit of statistics that they put up there are like how I'm so sorry, I feel like forget the business, like they're the company name of it, but like how what their trajectory is for like the next like 10 years or so, with how many
Yeah.
people that they want to help. So I think that really goes with the whole like motif of I started from nothing. I wasn't given anything, but I'm able to do that now for others. And what a great opportunity that is for me.
And the I'm just getting started part in the halftime of it all. Because
Yes.
I think, again, something that comes with that, like, part of your life and the don't give a fuck of it all is sometimes people like a Jennifer Lopez will work so hard to get where they like want to go. And it's kind of like about them and their career and being career motivated, but like being able to be in a position where, like, okay, I'm secure in my career. Like, if I take these risks, like, I'll be fine. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna get, like, I'm not a young star still trying to make it and trying to help people before I put, like, you gotta put the air mask on yourself before you put it on other
True.
people. And I think hers is on securely now, and she's
True.
trying to put it on and help other people at this point in her life. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to see what else comes of that. Um, we Someone else said racism. And I think they were more so talking about like maybe the stuff with like the late night host and stuff. So I think we talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh, we talked about, well, we talked about the cages, and we kind of talked about the NFL trying to get rid of them, which, you know, we I think it clearly
Yeah.
is understand it from what we talked about that that's not cool and dumb, and the NFL is
Hella dumb.
trash. But
They're fucking trash.
um what
Na-na-na,
else?
na-na-na, trash. Na-na-na, na-na-na, trash, trash.
Oh, someone said Anna Wintour was at the premiere.
Of Hustlers or the
No, of
documentary?
Halftime.
Oh,
I think I've seen that because I think I saw like something about that, and she, oh no, wait.
it was
I
when
think
she
that
went to
was
go
the
do the
Versace
Versace
show.
show. Yeah, and she was the Anna
Yeah.
Wintour, like always famously, like just keeps her sunglasses on, very like Edna mode, right? Just like, but she said,
Yeah.
like, yeah, when I walked by, apparently she was like
Yeah.
waving to
Um
her or something.
and this is K Metal T88 who always comments on our stuff. What's up, girl? And she also is like, "Oh, I wonder if she's going to get a cover soon," which I don't has JLo's been on the cover of Vogue, right?
Yes, just
I feel
recently.
like she has. But
Maybe.
if she hasn't, then she definitely should be. What a missed opportunity, Anna Wintour. Let's see.
Yes, she was on the cover of Vogue twice, it looks like. I'm trying to look at the date. This was one was in 2012, and then another one is shoot, I don't see the date, but she's wearing like a fairly cute kind of dress. Almost has like an Elvis print on it.
Oh.
Or no, it's like women dancing on it. Oh, darn it. Why can't I see the date? It doesn't matter. But yeah, she's been on Vogue a few times. Another time, three times, maybe. Vogue
Oh, okay.
Indonesia. I mean, it's like not just US Vogues.
Yeah.
It's got to count for something.
Yeah, I'm not gonna shit on like another country's iteration of the magazine because those are important because usually they highlight more people of color than U.S. Vogue tends to.
Fashion, fashion.
But Anna went. If the Devil Wears Prada is anything like the real Vogue, then I don't think Anna Wintour has any say on like British Vogue and stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
remember that one French lady was about to take
Oh yeah.
Miranda's job, and she's like, "Oh no, I switched that real quick."
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do want to say that it was, you know, I love a Selena moment. So Roger Ebert talked about her and Selena,
Mm-hmm.
but it was so different seeing her for that Golden Globes and hearing her
She's so
talk about it
young.
versus like seeing the kind of machine and star she's become for the
Mm-hmm.
current one. I can
Mm-hmm.
imagine like her hair and makeup was very simple back then,
Mm-hmm.
and this one was very like thought out. She had multiple dresses. Also, just highlights the missed opportunity of nominating her for an Oscar because, like we said before, she would have killed the red carpet.
Oh
Like,
my
looked
God.
amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, and then also, I just want to say I really enjoyed Laureen Scarfaria's quote in her speech for her award because she said, maybe because she's made hard work look so effortless for so long, it's easy to take Jennifer Lopez for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we leave the people with that thought.
Yes, I agreed.
So, yeah, I
Uh,
mean,
it was really great for me, and I think for us to be able to talk about. I think there's something very comforting and familiar after we have doing JLo movies. I mean, with the breaks and stuff we took in between, figuring everything out, it was a year and a half that we were doing that research and talking about it. And I was really excited to come on and do this little mini bonus ep on on it, and it just made me feel very nostalgic or whatever for our first season. So
Yeah.
I we're just getting started, and no is not an answer, it's an opportunity.
But yeah, this has been fun.
Thanks y'all for going back down the Jennifer Lopez IMDb Netflix rabbit hole with us, and
Yes.
stay tuned. Have a good
We
night.
love you.